because I'm sorry, it codes conservative, right? Or like a particular kind of like tech conservatism of like we got to defend like Western civilization. And look, like I'm genuinely like right there with people in the sense of like I think that like it's worth a good education is going to rely heavily on going through like the ancient Greek classics. I studied philosophy in school, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like I was
Right.
obsessed with reading Plato and Aristotle, and like I think that even
But just call it civilization.
no, yeah, no, you know what I'm saying?
Right?
Like it's worth it to go through that. I think it is always funny, and like no judgment to other folks who end up like upholding those things. It is, I think it's good to like start somewhere and end somewhere, right? In the sense of like you start with maybe some of the cool ancient Greek philosophy and you get to Marxism. It's always very funny when people are like, that's it, right? It's like, come on, man, there's like 2,000 years of development on this stuff.
Right.
But I guess what I'm saying is like what's also frustrating in the same way we're complaining about like Musk and Bezos and space is that these guys get to sort of sit around and be like, we are the inheritors of this, we are of this lineage, and they don't even like understand, or even I think, in my opinion, like really appreciate what it is that they're holding as like their provenance, right? Their provenance. So
yes, I mean, what's wild about this? Yeah, actually, introduce it, then I'll comment.
But we have this insane kind of example of how amazing AI can be. So like, and also like, look, Matt and I are podcasters, right? Everyone listening to this is listening to a podcast. I think that they're important. I listen to them, that we get a lot of information. But there's something about the way that the tech people talk about podcasts, right? That
Yes.
also like really
like the Lex Friedman guys.
yeah, exposes like their illiteracy, right? Do you know what I mean? They're just like, well, we could have a podcast with these people on it, right?
It's like, bro, like it's fun and exciting to get serious about thinking. But yeah.
No, I mean, like, again, like I'm not even trying to dog on the whole. I think there's like you can reach a lot of people, you can get to interesting places. But I'll tell you one thing, as somebody who also writes, I always like when I write a piece for Jacobin, it meant that I spent 10 to 12 hours on top. Like you read the argument, there's like 10 hours on top of that of stuff that didn't make it in. It's very purposeful. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that one is necessarily like, you know, way higher than the other, because there's that other kind of, you know, sometimes I tell people what I do and they give me that look, particularly writers. But like, anyways, like this kind of fixation that they have that like this is like the high form of media, and like the only reason that we don't have great philosophy on podcasts is because it, you know, preceded the time of computers and microphones. You know, is insane.
Yeah. Well, I guess, yeah, let's just play it and let people experience. I mean, look, if you are very impressed by this, I'll explain why I wish I could be like you.
Ah, my dear friend Bill, I see you have brought a device with you today. What purpose does it serve?
Greetings, Socrates. This is a laptop, a marvel of modern technology. It harbors an artificial intelligence that can revolutionize heuristic education.
Interesting.
Imagine a world where students learn at their own pace, guided by a tireless tutor that never errs.
Is this the MacBook you often refer to?
No.
We are already starting at some very incredible positions.
Yep.
A computer, a device that never errs, right? One, if you've ever had a computer breakdown or computer virus, you know that's not true. Let's maybe assume that, because the conversation next is going to be how we can use technology, particularly artificial intelligence, to educate people. One thing that's been really scary to me, Matt, I don't know if you've come across this yet, is a lot of people in the public don't understand what ChatGPT is yet, which is just like a text simulation software, predictive text software.
Yes, the thing in your phone that, yeah, exactly, that predicts what you're going to say next is this with like a very, very large amount of graphics cards behind it.
So, because I've seen people on Twitter, for example, like cite ChatGPT as like a reference. You know, I asked ChatGPT and this is what it said. It was like ChatGPT is just trolling a lot of things that other people have written, you know, in public. It's not it doesn't understand what it's giving you, which is why one of the funniest and I think most telling examples of ChatGPT's limitations, like in terms of artificial intelligence has been people asking it math questions and seeing, which is like the thing that computers are supposed to be better at than humans, right?
Exactly.
Get do calculations that we can't. Seeing it fail at that. So, anyways, this guy, some doofus is like asking it like serious questions about politics or history or whatever, and like, well, this is what it says, which is just insane. So, anyways, this like the infallibility of technology is like such a fetish of these people. The computer has to be made, right? The machine has to be made, and it's going to have all of those things in it.
And this is where the guidance to demystify this entire thing is instead of calling this AIs, you call them chatbots. Yeah. Because here's the thing. Bill Gates, Diane Ravitch has this, she's an education writer, activist, has this piece out, but this is a study commissioned by Bill Gates's foundation itself. A headline, Rand study, Gates Foundation wasted $575 million on teacher evaluation initiative. And so I don't know how tied Bill Gates is to this dumb bullshit, but just put that aside. He is in the media talking about, he wasted $500 million wasting kids' time trying to do shit, right? So that he would get to decide, okay, instead of you know what sounds really good is a tireless tutor that never errs named Socrates. You know what? That sounds a lot better than a chatbot. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Like that's all we're dealing with here. And I listened to Derek Thompson on Bill Simmons podcast, and they're talking about AI, and he agreed with me right now, which he says that right now it's basically a waste of time that might have certain promising things to do with it. And maybe we'll get into that later. Like language naturalization, like that's pretty impressive, right? But then he got to a point where he said, and this is where it reminds me of crypto again, which is it could help with healthcare, with diagnosing, which is another fucking chatbot. Okay, so maybe you can get a really good chatbot that can tell you if you have cancer or not. And this is, again, something that needs to be dealt with state programs, right? Public health, right? And it's the same way like crypto's like, ooh, what about all these unbanked people? Yeah, we do a state bank for them. Right?
I mean, come on,
exactly. It's no, I mean, we should looking at these issues.
We should make it every time, but like we know this point, right? It's just like whenever these guys start talking about like the societal benefit of all of these things, the vast majority of the case examples are things that we have the capability of doing right now, and we probably have the capabilities of doing 100 years ago. It's the politics, right?
Exactly. So let's watch a little bit more of this.
We got too much. We got to let them go because we got to get to the good shit here. The meeting of
this is a surface. You just need to remember that surface.
Fascinating, but tell me, what is
that AI laugh track placement?
This artificial intelligence you speak of?
It is a machine that can learn and reason, built upon vast amounts of data and complex algorithms. It imitates human thought processes to provide tailored learning experiences.
I sense a shadow over this marvel, a hidden danger lurking within. Dear Bill, as you know, I am a proponent of self-examination and seeking wisdom.
That's true.
Tell me, what might we gain from this new form of intelligence you have created?
Oh, you don't know how much Microsoft has been in the line.
If you don't mind, Bill Gates did not invent this. That's all I want to say. It's like they're already like you're seeing the mythos like popping up.
Yeah, I mean, and why is he? Look, you are the philosophy guy. Socrates, did he talk like a British guy?
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
And it's just like I gotta say, like it really pains me that people might be impressed by this, or not be impressed by it, but think it is what it purports to be, which is actually like giving you access to Socrates in some way. Because I understand why that's desirable. I would love to be able to like talk to Abe Lincoln. Maybe if we could AI Karl Marx, but that is not ever going to be accessible. This is a chatbot trained on like the compiled works of Socrates, right? Like, or Plato. Like, sorry.
No, I mean that's fine. No, I mean, like, no,
hey, I wouldn't have corrected
it's like
there.
I played around with the Chat GPT stuff, right? And I'm not saying this is end all be all, but I just was like, I try to do a conversation with it as if it was Karl Marx, but from Texas, because if people don't know, as I always love pointing out, Karl Marx tried to move here, so I just like, just for fun.
That's as real as Socrates.
Like we didn't have
Birmingham.
Whatever. Like I know these are still learning or whatever. I'm not even trying to come at them for that, but it's just like this is more stylistically Socrates than Socratic, right? In the sense of like being like representative of Socrates' thought. Because I will say this, I don't know if you experienced this, this Matt, but like there's something that unlocks in certain guys' heads when they first learn about Socrates and Socratic method. And for people who don't know, what's very famous about Socrates is in the dialogues that Plato wrote, particularly like the Republic. Socrates always asks questions, and that's the way that he argues, right? Is instead of like him so much putting up his idea, he's just using his questions to sort of challenge your understanding of what it is that you're arguing and getting to a deeper truth. And it's very effective.
It's
right?
honestly genius. If you're ever on a Twitter fight, you shift to that mode and things get really serious when the other person has to move from, tearing down your shit to elaborate in their shit.
But like, because I want to play a little bit more of this. I don't want us to miss out on the gold that's coming. But the point that I wanted to make really quick, and this is me being an asshole and being an elitist or whatever, is that a lot of times people think that all that is just asking questions. Right. And the point is with Socrates, like Socrates, he was getting somewhere with it, right? Like he had like an understanding that he's trying to get to by posing these questions.
He wasn't just Larry
He wasn't
King.
just like being annoying and asking a bunch of questions. And I've seen that. I mean, I'll never forget one time when I was a freshman at school, this kid who was in one of my courses, we're studying Socrates. And we went to we were like completely separate from the course, but like there was just like a talk at the campus, and the guy shows up, and they have the Q&A at the end of like the discussion, and tries to do the Socratic method on like the panelists. Yeah, dude, I was mortified for him, but the guy luckily had enough confidence that he was unfazed, but just came across as like the dumbest, most insane person ever. Because like, again, totally, you can get to a lot by asking people questions like that, make them put out their argument in fullness, but there has to be a point. And this is why like the dumbass guy version of Socrates that we're about to see here is not a good like representative of it, which is like why it's so worrying to me to think about like, oh my God, think about how often like conservatives like to invoke Martin Luther King Jr. Can you imagine the kind of things that like a Chat GPT version of Martin, the things that he would say, right? Because for the most part, it's the point here is particularly with the language models, they're not that worked up about content. They're worked up about style, and then they just put it in a general argument, right? I've already come across this because I've tried to be lazy to utilize it to help me with my YouTube titles, because I am awful at doing YouTube titles, but it doesn't understand our program at all, right? So it gives me the most insane, not just clickbaity, but just like, oftentimes the title will be the complete opposite of what we're saying, because, we're not a program, for example, that does like the typical thing on a subject, right? We're like, why AI is bad, right? Versus like if I give it a prompt, it's going to flip it. And what I'm saying though is that like, these models are like limited to the conception of the world, particularly like the frequency of certain arguments being made. And can you imagine, as I was saying, is like what like an MLK version of the chatbot would be saying, and to take that seriously as a representative of like dark stuff.
It's honestly like thinking Michael's right-wing Mandela is a real like it honestly really
it is like Michael Brooks is like Nelson Mandela. Like you can 100% get that kind of guy to argue for Rick Santorum. All right,
there's this one or we want to play a little bit more of this.
I would, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I want to get to like the point that they make, because I think it like proves what we're saying.
Recently, if those big companies don't come out and talk about AI, I don't know how much the stock prices will fall. To be serious, Socrates, artificial intelligence has the potential to revolutionize heuristic education. We can utilize.
They keep saying that. I'm not going to look it up, but what is heuristic education?
It's a fancy word. I don't know.
The fuck is he talking about? Teach me that, AI.
AI to personalize learning, allowing each individual to explore and discover knowledge in a manner tailored to their own interests and abilities.
As the great philosopher Plato once said, the measure of a man is what he does with power.
I agree.
But Gatesius, do we not risk becoming over-reliant on this AI, losing our own ability to think critically and independently? Does not the essence of heuristic learning lie in the struggle to find solutions, much like how a moth must break free from its cocoon to strengthen its wings? Will AI not rob students of this essential struggle?
Any technology will have...
Just pause it for a second, because I'd like to let them finish their little fake debate here. But this is exactly why I hate this clip so much.
Right.
Because instead of Socrates like actually getting to like the sense, he's not asking about the makers of the machine. He's not talking about it. He's accepting wholeheartedly the idea that these things are actually like embodiments of intelligence and embodiments of consciousness. And the question you would ask Bill Gates in this hypothetical situation, right? Bill Gates, who they alluded to earlier, was the inventor of these things, which is insane and wrong. He doesn't even invent the computers, right? Like he's the patent master. Is that Bill Gates has a vested interest now, as Microsoft has invested heavily in these programs and in this technology,
and
making it seem like it is all powerful, like it is at this level of like being akin to human consciousness. So the threat, notice this, it is really important. They all talk. Musk talks about the danger of AI constantly. What is Musk trying to do? Musk wants to create an alternative artificial intelligence, right? You know what I mean? This is a guy that has a vested interest in having a slice of the AI pie. And I have no doubt about it. These things are going to be utilized in many different ways and in some ways that are helpful. I don't think that it's like, I'm like, friends of mine are like really down on tech. I'm not as down on tech as much as I am down on, one, what it does to working people, and two, what these constant hype trains from Bitcoin to this usually mean is that like it's a shoddy tech. The promises are not able to be met. And like this whole thing that like Socrates is engaging with Bill Gates, not on the level of like, does this actually work? Is this good? But like, oh, is this too powerful? Right? Like it is like the best advertisement for this kind of thing.
Exactly.
Right? Like, it's so powerful that we have to be scared about what it might do.
Yeah. And Sam Altman, who's I think he's the guy behind ChatGPT. He recently testified in front of Congress being like, we need to regulate AI. And everyone's like, whoa, look at this industry guy saying he wants regulation. And we're not used to dealing with that. And it's because, he wants to help. It's the same way crypto guys want regulation, is to help validate it and to entrench
they definitely want that because, exactly. It validates it.
Yep. But then you'll notice a week or so later, Sam Altman hears that the EU is like, hey, this sort of generative art shit, we don't know how this works with copyright. And Sam Altman's like, well, we got to leave Europe now. It's like, well, yeah, exactly. Like, and this Europe. Thing, like, like the idea that it is very sad that like, I feel like so many people are getting wrapped up in this in a way that I didn't think was possible. That like you'd think like you're actually accessing something here. The only thing that is trying to be accomplished here is to increase Bing's market share because now it incorporates AI technologies.
I think it just can't be said enough. Let's give him like 30, 40 more seconds and then we can move on. But
risks and limitations. In my time there was a guy who sold phones, but he rarely let his own children use them, which shows that everything has two sides.
Sure.
But AI can be designed to strike a balance. It need not provide immediate answers, but rather act as a mentor, gently nudging students in the right direction while allowing them to discover solutions on their own. At the same time, AI handles the mundane tasks, giving teachers more time to engage with students, on a deeper level.
But is it not through wrestling with these mundane tasks that the soul is strengthened and wisdom forged? Can a tree grow strong if it is not buffeted by the winds of adversity? Technology can be a tool, but does it not also serve as a crutch? I fear that reliance on AI will cause humans to become complacent, and thus cease to engage in the very heuristic thinking you claim it enhances. A ship's captain, for instance, must learn to navigate the seas on his own, for he cannot rely solely on his compass. Just like a Windows user has to learn how to fix the blue screen issue on their own, they can't always rely on calling you, right?
Sharp question, Socrates. I think we should rather consider artificial intelligence as a magnifying glass. When used wisely, it can help us see things more clearly and in turn make more informed decisions. It is up to us to ensure we use AI responsibly without losing sight of our own intellectual capabilities.
Bill, I am reminded of the allegory of the cave.
Yep.
I likened the pursuit of knowledge to a prisoner escaping a cave and discovering the world outside, which is illuminated by the sun, representing the truth.
It's a good story.
I'm not sure if AI is the leader who will guide us out of the cave of ignorance. I still have many doubts about it.
Again, look, I think it's important for everyone to feel like capable and willing to jump into these kind of things. But again, this is the kind of thing that shows to me, as like somebody who spent a lot of time studying like Plato's works, right? Which is Socrates is the main character, right? Socrates, we don't have his writings, it all comes via Plato. This shows to me again, this is like a 101 level Socrates, right? When you're doing the allegory of the cave, it's like that's the thing that you read in a lit course in high school to like introduce you to these kind of things. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and look, we don't need to get into it too deeply now, but was that a correct deployment of the cave? I don't know. It seems like we just need to be led out of it. First of all, it just seems ironic doing that with AI, which seems to be a bit of a projection.
Totally.
But yeah.
No, I mean, you know, it's a bizarre usage of it that I don't think belies like a lot of understanding of.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Like it might be on the surface level.
Greatest hit. We got to
right,
right. Versus like because he doesn't even make a point there. For the most part, Socrates, I think, is a perversion.
He kind of just takes it literally. Like there's an actual cave we gotta leave, and that's why it makes it seem like AI said this with no understanding. It was like, oh, we gotta leave the cave.
And I will just say, you know, we can be done with that. I will just say that even the level of the argument is like using allegory in philosophy. It can be useful to sort of elucidate a point. But it's also like the height of sophistry, right? Which if people don't remember, sophistry is the thing that Socrates was very against. There's people who were paid to basically be good at rhetoric, you know, at the time, and he found them to not be philosophers, right? Because like the point of their being was not to seek the truth, but rather just seek personal profit and gain from being good at making a point. And like allegory can be something. Or like any kind of like imagery and argument can be something that can be utilized, and it can seem like, oh, that makes sense. But I'll just give people an example that I like. It sits in my head forever. God, I'm like remembering things that I haven't thought about forever. But like, I remember I was in a great course, communism and capitalism in East Asia, right? And it was like a study on like the different societies in East Asia, China obviously being communist, and you know, looking at like Korea, Singapore, Japan, and seeing what happened in different societies, right? Doesn't matter. I don't know even why I brought that up. Some fucking numbskull idiot trying, I think, to personally antagonize me, because that's very well known as like the communist in those courses, said, well, a wise man once said that communists, if a communist is on a boat, they try to change the wind, but a capitalist just moves the sails, right? It's like, well, one is like, okay, in the general sense of what you're saying, right? Yes, it's an insane position to take to say that I'm going to change the wind versus changing the sails if you're on a ship. But what you're doing there is you're attaching the reasonable position to that versus not. Because I could say that if I was a misogynist, right, a man and like a woman would try to change the wind, but a man would change the sails, right? It's meaningless in terms of your argument, right? And like Bill Gates's example there about like, well, it's more of a magnifying glass than a crutch or something like that, right? It's such a low level of like rhetoric and argument that's going on there that, again, like I shouldn't hold it to such a high standard because it's obviously an insane thing, but like,
no, you're right, because what's happening right now is what happened, you know, when the farmers in Minnesota, they're realizing, hey, this grain elevator is cutting in a bunch of bullshit with the flour and it's diluting the quality. That's exactly what's happening here. Like it is sophistry. It is nothing, but what people are expecting to get from it, the actual nutrition and philosophical nutrition, that desire should be met. It should be met by something that isn't like fucking, and like, where's syntax? Sorry, Socrates, which English translation did you train this Socrates bot off of? Like, right? Like,
he said wow a bunch, which I don't know what the ancient Greek word for wow was. But
yes. Wow. I think this Socrates has spent a little too much time listening to podcasts and a little like too much time out of ancient Greece.